What's up everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Combo Damage TV. I know, just from reading the title of this video, I'm sure some of you are probably like, really? The least respected, most crapped on category of fighting games? This is what you're proposing as the potential future of the genre? And for those of you who might be thinking this, I get it. In fact, I said the same thing for years. We all know that the arena fighting game is the bastard stepchild of the FGC. Nobody considers them competitive, therefore nobody considers them to be good. They're non-traditional, the controls are too easy, they're meant for casuals, blah 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 blah. And to be fair, the bad rap that arena fighters get is quite deserved. 100% of the time, they force you to slog through really shitty single-player content just to unlock characters and modes that should otherwise be available to you from day one. On top of that, you already know how much I think the oversaturation of weird, goofy, poorly dubbed, corny-ass, oftentimes anime-like bullshit sends most fighting games spiraling into obscurity. Now multiply that times 11 and you have the majority of arena fighters. But as I grew older and fighting game ideas grew more stale, I became more open-minded to trying all the ways you could pit two opponents against each other. PvP, if you will. So in 2019, I finally got my first taste of the arena fighter genre. And that game was Kill la Kill If. Now, this video won't be about Kill la Kill. I don't really recommend buying this game unless you can find it on sale for like, I don't know, $6, and have close friends who would be interested in trying it with you. It has cheap production value, it's dead online, has very few characters, and suffers from the same waifu, lowly, weeby shit that plagues fighting games in general. The draw for me, however, was the fact that it's made by Arc Systems, and since they make traditional fighting games that are good, I was willing to try it with a friend. Point is, I actually had fun. Yeah, we had a blast playing this game, and it ended up being my gateway drug into the world of arena fighters. I got into games like Jump Force, My Hero, and Ninja Storm, and enjoyed myself quite a bit. And yeah, we were still playing competitively, learning characters and trying to get good, and it made me realize that fighting games didn't need to be traditional to be a good time. But then it ultimately got me thinking, what is an arena fighter really? And it's the answer to this question that opened my eyes to the realization that this could be another untapped avenue into popularizing fighting games and broadening their appeal. Just hear me out. Per the Giant Bomb website, an arena fighter is a subgenre of fighting games that focuses on more free-controlling 3D movement and a camera that follows the character. Unlike other traditional 3D fighting games like Dead or Alive or Soul Calibur, that still maintain a side-scrolling form of movement and a side view of the match. So in other words, an arena fighting game is just a third-person, single-player game engine repurposed as a fighting game. Instead of running around different worlds and levels battling enemies, you're instead on a single stage battling a human opponent. This means one of the most universal, easily understood ways of playing video games in general can be applied to fighting games. When you break it down this way, you soon realize that there is a huge untapped market here. Think of some of the most amazing enemy encounters and boss fights you've had in other games. These could have all been potentially a fighting experience with another person. Imagine if Star Wars Fallen Order had a versus mode. Think of all those cool lightsaber duels you had in that game. There's no reason why these couldn't have been experienced with a real opponent. Think of all the amazing fights you had in Sekiro, clashing swords with the enemy. Or the beautiful and intense one-on-one samurai battles from Ghost of Tsushima.
Stop! Before it's too late!
Just the other day, I popped in Dante's Inferno, which came out in 2010 by the way. I reached the very first boss battle and thought to myself, geez, this would have made for a seriously dope fighting experience with another player. The number of action-adventure melee type of games with the same mechanics as standard fighting games is pretty extensive. Games with dodges, parries, reversals, whiff punishes, and guard breaks. And we're talking about games that are universally praised for having tight controls and competent gameplay. Clearly, moving around in a 3D world with good battle mechanics and accessible controls is very familiar to the average consumer. We already have an endless number of games across multiple styles and difficulty levels that work this way, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to create fighting games that work the same. But that just covers gameplay. What about everything else? See, one of the main things that fighting games always lack is content. Whether it's single player or multiplayer, the only thing there is to do really is pick a few characters, practice how to use them, and then fight your friends or strangers online. Yeah, there's always your standard arcade mode or survival mode. At best, you might get a story mode, which really just ends up being arcade mode with cutscenes. And I think this has a lot to do with how impractical it would be to create a full-blown single-player experience using a typical fighting game engine. Probably not impossible with 2D fighting games, since 2D side-scrollers already exist. In fact, I'm surprised this hasn't been done more often, but still impractical. Even the times that Namco tried to include an adventure mode in Tekken, those modes didn't really play like Tekken. Besides, that's a lot of development time and resources trying to build an engine for a fighting game, along with a completely separate engine for a single-player style experience. You'd literally be trying to make two games at once. Looks like this is the direction Capcom will be going in with Street Fighter 6, and while I'm not entirely sold on the Xenoverse formula they're going for just yet, I'll reserve judgment until we see how that turns out. But that's where the arena fighting game comes in. You're already working with a game engine designed for full 3D movement. So let's say your intent is to create a fighting game with content, story, world building, levels, NPC, and lore. Whether it be online or offline, this would be the most practical way to do it. The same types of games that allow us to traverse worlds and unravel stories are clearly capable of giving us visceral combat experiences. Truth is, you gotta give people something else to do other than just fighting an opponent. And while there are many ways to tackle the lack of content in fighting games, which I'll get to in another video, the flexibility that a fully 3D, adventure game-friendly environment offers is a good place to start. Now, I'm well aware that there are online brawler and battle royale type of fighting experiences like For Honor, Absolver, Rumbleverse, and even Nakara. And while it's good that games like this also exist, they can oftentimes feel like a mashy, jumbled mess with so many players on one map. Now, I'm talking about a real 1v1 fighting game experience. So, in conclusion, why do arena fighters have so much untapped potential? Because you're using a game engine that is familiar, accessible, and much better suited for building levels, worlds, and content outside of just the core fighting. And while it's easy to associate arena fighters with goofy anime or a lack of polish, they could be so much more, just like standard fighting games. But what do you think? Is there potential for this type of format to open new doors into fighting game experiences? Are there single-player games or titles you've always felt could have made for a fun fighting game, or at least included a versus mode? Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, thanks for stopping by, and see you next time.